Hello everyone and welcome to Phoenix Gaming. I am your host Nick Henning and today we are covering the 2023 Wingspan Ring Final. Underneath my video, Chris George and Jeff Jeff of 2022 Wingspan fame are covering this same thing. You can watch the video if you want to see their coverage on the Dice Tower channel. But what we're going to be doing today is our own commentary on the same game and also at 50% increased speed. I saw that this game ended up taking a little bit longer than I think Wingspan should. So we're going to see what happens. We whip through at a relatively comfortable rate. Let's go ahead and get ourselves started. So I think in seat number 1 here we have Maria, who's going to open up with the, I think it's a barn owl. And I'm not a huge fan of opening with the barn owl at the beginning. I think what you're interested in doing is getting a card engine and a food engine at the beginning of the game. So I wonder if she's got other kind of long-term plans opening with a barn owl in the egg slot. That's an interesting play that I think is more powerful kind of in the mid game as you can start kind of generating a lot of points. But early on, you really want to be focusing on getting that card system or getting that card or that food system up and early as possible. Rob went ahead and grabbed a cheap bird off the table. I think it was a bird that goes into the forest, a vulture, which is a nice opportunistic grab for him that just lets him kind of slide up into the food area that we were talking about there. And Mitchell here has an opening that I'm definitely a fan of. The Morning Dove lets him make eggs by taking food. It plants eggs on itself. And so at the beginning of the game, you don't really want to be taking the eggs action, but you do need eggs to continue developing your little system there. So he puts that in the food area, which is a nice little mini combo. It's not as powerful as some of the most powerful birds. The bird is worth 0 points itself, but it's a great kind of starting play there. Mike goes ahead and grabs the fish crow from the table. Fish crow is, one of the weaker crows, but it is worth 6 points, and it does allow you to find a way to convert eggs into food. And as I was just talking about, while it's not an amazing conversion ratio, it allows Mike to take actions that will essentially, like, he could take food while taking the eggs action. Awkwardly, though, it doesn't look like he has any fish to do anything with it. Maria also looks like grabbed a card off the board, and I may have missed what it was, or she was deciding what it was. Looks like she actually instead decides to go and get some food. The food is a little bit awkward right now with a couple rats and a couple cranberries out there. So I can see her prioritizing, I think there's a grain maybe that she grabbed, or a seed. Is that what it's called? I just call it grain because it's all board games have grain in them. So she grabbed that like seed, the yellow thing, I think instead, which is probably a really good grab. It's a resource that you end up using for a lot of different birds, not the ones that we see in play right now, but this starting roll here is going to be pretty awkward with the mice or the rats and the cranberries. I think that's going to make it so that the players are going to have, you're hoping to see more like worms in the beginning, because a lot of the cheaper birds that sort of let you, build sort of like engine-y type bonuses end up costing a lot of worms. Worms, I believe, is the most common resource consumed in the game. And speaking of worms, Rob grabs the Bell's Vireo. Bell's Vireo is one of those mid to late game cards. It's worth a good chunk of points, and it gives you a bonus card. But the nice thing about Bell's Vireo is that it also lets you, it's the starbird, so it counts as having any nest. And if you can see, it's a little fuzzy, but I think the second and third rounds of this game care about different kinds of nests, bowls, and then maybe pebble nests. And we're starting and ending with birds that care about the forest and about the wetlands here. So it'll be interesting to see what the players decide they want to compete in. Mitchell obviously ahead the most in the forest. I mean, I think a great starting round of this game is having the most birds in the forest, because you have then a food production engine as well as a way of making a bunch of points for having the most in the forest there. Mitchell then did a really interesting thing. He took the eggs action. So he prioritized having 2 eggs over having a food and an egg, which is not normally a decision I'd agree with, but I guess he's just really saying, I don't care about having cranberries or rats, and it also kind of jams up the market for other folks. Mike here goes ahead and grabs, I believe it's a woodpecker that looks like one of those bonus card woodpeckers. So he picked up 2 bonus cards. And again, I think to me, that's more of a mid-game kind of play. It doesn't help develop anything for his engine. It's not that the bird will be beneficial by being triggered a bunch of times or anything like that. But by grabbing a bonus card early, he might have a sense more of what he wants to build towards in the game. That being said, with the bonus cards in Wingspan, I find that it's not often that I will pay too much attention to them. I mean, of course you want to, and of course you want those extra points. Anywhere from 3 to 7 points. It does make a really big difference in this game, but you don't want to throw away like the fundamentals of how you're playing this game when you're grabbing those kinds of birds. You can, for instance, if you were like, oh, I want the birds that have like the good colors on them, and then you decide to grab here the American white pelican, or maybe geographic birds for that reason, but you don't have anything else really you're going to be using. You're not going to create fish to take advantage of that. It's going to lead to a problem. I think Maria grabbed a random card, and then Rob is following that up by playing a black vulture, which is just going to kind of unfortunately blank Maria's owl a little bit, because anytime she's going to hit with the owl, it's going to give him something even better. And Rob's really happy to see another owl coming out here for Mitchel. This owl is going to come in right after the morning dove here. And I am going to assume that Mitchel might have another bird going into the forest soon with his grab for 2 eggs. I'll be very curious to see if that is indeed the plan. Given that the owl could have eaten one of those rats, would have been reasonable for him to do that. I think it looked actually like Maria maybe. Oh no, that was Michael. So Mike went ahead and grabbed a cranberry from the center. And this is what I mean about the woodpecker and its power, right? Like if that was a bird that generated something, such as Mitchel's morning dove that made an egg, that's just something different. Now, of course, you can only play the cards that you're dealt, so there's a really good chance that Mike just wasn't holding any birds that would go into a forest that did anything special for him. And you still do want to be playing into those forests and wetlands early so that you have ways, again, to generate food, generate cards, so that you can keep on building birds throughout the game. Looks like Maria grabbed a rat. And Rob here is going to play a bird. Yep, he's going to eat up his rat and worm, and that looks like and something else. It's a night heron, so that's a lot of victory points. You don't generally want to be playing very expensive birds at the beginning of the game, but this bird at least gives him the ability to use eggs for food. So I could see Rob probably is going to be following this up by putting eggs on the night heron and then essentially using that card drawing row to draw cards and make food. And so he'll be able to kind of ignore his top row, which he might do depending on the kinds of cards that he has. If he has cheaper cards, like just having a night heron as this food production thing is an option for him. At this stage, it's probably going to be hard for him to compete directly with Mitchel for creation, right? Mitchel's grabbing 2 food right now. And so he's likely going to be able to lock in that forest bird's reward at the end of the round. And getting second on the first round is, I think, it's like 1 point. So it's not that big of a deal for the other players to compete for that if they aren't going to be able to beat Mitchel out. Now, of course, Mitchel might not have the third forest bird in hand, so it's certainly worth posturing for getting the second bird. If 2 players tied, they would each be getting 2 points, which is not a ton, but an advantage to like realize in that is that you're also preventing the player in first from getting the full 4. And here we see the dove making that extra egg. Yeah. Mike's about to get us in the exact halfway point of the round as he puts some eggs into play. This is going to allow him to play a bird up into the forest, which is good for him because he wants to have 2 birds up there so he can be drawing 2 food at a clip rather than just the 1 food that he's grabbing right now. Speaking of grabbing 1 food, Maria does exactly that with a re-rolled food lot here, a much more evenly distributed roll for Mitchel was the one who triggered the re-roll on his turn. Rob's going to grab those eggs that we talked about from before. And I'm trying to remember if Night Heron is any egg or an egg off another bird. Let's see if we can pull it up. Of course, I get real Wingspan things. I wonder what Mitchell's debating here, because I do think that if he has a 3rd bird that can go into the forest, it'd be a good play. Looks like he was debating whether he wants to grab food now or later. My guess is that means that he needs one of those foods, but maybe not the second one. And it looks like he's doing some doubling up because I can't entirely see under his name, but it looks like he has a worm and a cranberry, and he just grabbed another worm and a cranberry. Or maybe those are the worm and cranberry. No, he grabbed more. Or maybe there's a fish in there. Oh, I think it's a fish rather than a cranberry. And there he goes, rolling for the hunt. Rob is sitting there going, yeah, win it, win the hunt. I generally think that at this stage of the game, it's seriously worth a consideration about whether a person would pass on the hunting action, because you getting the 1 point for the hunting action versus someone else getting a food, the vulture getting a food for that hunting action, it's very, very favorable for the vulture player. Now, that being said, I do generally have the opinion that a multiplayer game, you really got to maximize your own score because, you know, Mitchell choosing to tank himself in comparison to Mike or Maria, right? Like he's losing proposition against Rob, but he doesn't know that Rob's his main competitor yet. So, you know, in that regard, it actually does make sense. And I think it's a very difficult call about whether you're supposed to be running those hunting birds when other people have vultures at the beginning of the game. Certainly by the mid to late game, you're meant to. Mike here plays a blue jay. Blue jay is a nice little choice in the forest there. It's not, you know, the most amazing of the bird cards, but it just generates some extra resources for him, which is going to help quite a bit as he develops. And Maria here is going to get, I think it's, I can't tell which woodpecker it is from this here, so we're going to guess from her actions, but that might be the woodpecker that lays eggs on certain kinds of birds. One of the advantages of the owl that she played out is that it is a star bird, which is going to help in those middle game scorings. And if she does indeed have the woodpecker that I think she does, that lets her like lay eggs on birds of certain nests, the star woodpecker is going to help with that as well. All right, let's pull up. I'm pretty sure there's a Wingspan bird cards GitHub or something. It's exactly that. It's a GitHub. And let's see if I'm right about the Night Heron. So Night Heron says, yeah, other birds, which is a little bit awkward for Rob in that he can only store so many birds on that vulture. So that's something to be aware of. And then let's look up our woodpeckers and see. Oh, actually, I think that's an acorn woodpecker, which lets her gain extra grain from the bird feeder. It's a really expensive bird, 3 grain. It's not the ideal kind of bird. I mean, you want to be playing birds that are going to get you extra food and extra cards at the beginning of the game, but you're not hoping that they cost 3 resources to do that. So while it's a fine play, it's not the most exciting start. I definitely think Maria's birds are not cooperating with her the most. No one has the most amazing birds here. Like, the best bird out there is probably like the mourning dove, and that's kind of saying something. It's really, really not the most exciting. But yeah, Maria's is doing the same thing that the blue jay is doing, but it costs an extra resource for, 2 extra points or whatever. All right, then we're going to see Rob doing the drawing cards, eating resources thing. I didn't see anything get pulled off the center there, so he probably drew off the top of the deck, which I think is very, very legitimate. None of those cards that are sitting in the center there are terribly exciting right now. Some good points on like the common loon or something like that, but the birds are not, their powers are not too incredible, and they don't really fit with anything that he's done so far. They are decent for the objectives. Like, I think the common loon might match the last two objectives, but its power, where it's like, might not even help you. And ironically, like, it hurts itself, right? Players with the fewest water birds get to draw a card. And when you play it, that's an additional water bird in your area. I think that this is a grosbeak from Mitchel. Let's see if I'm right about that, which I think gets more resources, like more food resources. And let's see. Maybe it's not a grosbeak. I can't fully tell what bird that is. Yeah, I don't think it's a grosbeak. We'll have to see when he runs it, but I think that's a bird that sits in the middle. It looks like it costs him 3 resources. And maybe make some food when he runs it. The problem that Mitchel's going to come into is card draw. I think is going to hurt him later. Mike goes ahead and grabs some food, is able to take advantage of his blue jay. Looks like Maria's going to do the same thing, grabbing some food. And that acorn woodpecker is going to do some woodpecking. Or grain pecking. See if I can make this video a little larger. No, I don't think so. I think it is what it is. See if I can figure out what this bird is. The problem with this GitHub is that it doesn't show the pictures of the birds, or it shows their outlines. I'm sure for legal reasons of some sort. These are not promising, my friend. What bird are you? I see Rob here is kind of debating his options. And we're about 3/4 of the way through the round. Mitchel did not end up playing that third bird, so it looks like it's a race between Mitchel and Mike to see who might be up top there. Rob's going to go ahead and grab a resource from the center, and it's just one, which makes sense. I wouldn't expect that did he discard a card? Oh, he is discarding a card for a second resource. So looks like he drew something probably off the top that he didn't like too much. Mitchel, what is this bird? I don't think it's a terribly good bird because I'm not familiar with it. That's my instinct. Part of the reason that I chose to cover Wingspan today is I actually played in this event. Mitchel is the one who beat me in the semifinals, actually. So I don't know if we're rooting for him or against him, but we definitely have strong feelings about him one way or another. We just haven't figured out our feelings yet. We're very confused in that way. It would help if I was not looking at expansion birds, right? Just space, please. All right, so it looks like Mitchel's going to go ahead and grab some more food here. And we're honing in on the end of the round. This is his 7th action, so Mike might have the chance to kind of take top dog here for the round scoring, which, normally isn't essential. I just think that in this instance, it's quite beneficial because nobody's having a super exciting start. And so getting those extra points from the end of round goals means that that's probably going to be the difference, I think, between a player who's winning and losing. Now, they're playing a really funky rule at WSBG where the power 4 birds, the ones that let you discard an egg for 2 food or discard an egg for 2 cards, cannot be played in the first round of play. So it'll be interesting to see when we go into the second round of play if anybody lays one of those birds down right off the beginning, and really they may have been setting up their game plan for that. I think that for most of these players, having a bird that's going to let them draw some extra cards is going to make a big difference because nobody has bird production systems here. Now, Mike could play this fish crow anywhere. He could really go for that round scoring by placing it up top, but instead he's going to play the fish crow in the middle row, which is just, I think, the most sensible thing to do. The fish crow really thrives in that center row where you can consume eggs for food. Mike's got a whole food engine here. Like he makes 2 to 3 food when he runs his forest. He makes a food every time he consumes an egg in his grasslands. The problem he's going to come across is that he needs cards, and he needs cards that want to consume for, those food resources for a good point ratio later on. So I'd be curious to see if he has a plan going into the second round for how he is going to be drawing extra cards. It's really true for most of the players. Rob's the only one who's played anything into the wetlands, which is pretty rare at the beginning of the game. I think these players had okay starting hands and essentially said, all right, let's make the whole game plan around these starting hands. So they, kept enough birds that they got some extra food and essentially have played out to start off with. But yeah, like I said, nothing here that's like super exciting or very obviously favorable. I think right now, it's a little tough to say how I feel about each of the players' positions. I think I like the birds that Rob has the most. Mitchell and Mike have the most in play, kind of the most infrastructure there, which generally is going to be an indicator of how well a player is doing. I do think Maria is a step behind the other players, just with some kind of weaker birds that cost a little bit more than you'd hope to for what it is that they do. And she had to take some kind of inefficient food actions to get that acorn woodpecker in play, which again probably is just a reflection of what she had available to her. It's kind of one of the brutal things about this game is that if you don't have, you can only play the cards that you draw, and if you don't have ways of drawing more cards, you can really get stymied. Rob's gonna get first crack at what the cards that get flipped out next turn are. Watching this on 50% is hilarious because Mike is so animated. It's too bad that we don't have video for Rob and Maria, but Mike has enough physical manifestations for everyone around. All right, this application is not helping me right now. I would like to see all these birds, please. No, I'm never gonna figure out what it is. That's fine. I guess you could probably hear me clicking too, which I'm sure is annoying. Sorry about that. The funny thing about Wingspan at 50% speed is that, most of it is going to be when people are stopping and thinking, because obviously there's been a handful of rounds where I'm struggling to keep up with the players. I don't entirely know what Rob's considerations are right now. I wonder if he is debating putting a second bird into the forest, whether he thinks that it's going to be worthwhile. Like if someone else is going to play a third bird, it's pretty rough for him. The fact that he's considering playing into the wetlands there suggests that he might really need certain cards, but this is what I had actually expected, where he's going to just get those eggs. The eggs will allow him to do night heron things, will allow him to draw 2 cards by discarding the second egg for the second card, which is what he wants to be doing. So he's going to be switching between that wetland and that grassland until he finds what he wants to be doing with himself. It's interesting. He's also chosen to grab 3 grubs. We know he's got the Bell's Vireo in hand, so that's part of the that's 2 of the grubs. But again, a card that you're not hoping to play too early, although admittedly its star power is going to come into play in the second round. Mitchell here just grabs some eggs and does whatever that blue bird that I don't know what it does. Did he grab a food? Okay, I think that blue bird is some kind of bird that grabs food. So Mitchell's got like this whole integrated system. All the actions do a little bit of everything, again, except for card drawing. Michael here grabs a card. He grabs the common loon. I was dunking on the Common Loon earlier about how it's not a very strong card, and I stand by that. However, we've already talked about how Mike's gonna he's gonna be getting a lot of food resources, and so he wants to convert that food into victory points. And that Common Loon, I believe, I can't quite see the third goal, but I think it matches the third and fourth round goals. So it's a lot of points. It's a 6-point card. So I respect that grab. It's not the best card, but for Mike's position, it's pretty good. I think the funniest thing was that the card we saw off the top, the Wood Duck, is a card that lets you draw additional cards, and you could throw it up in the forest, and that would have been a really monster card, I think, for Mike or Mitchell, but it was kind of just hidden on the top of the deck there. Big flip here for big boys, the Bald Eagle and the Scissor-tailed Flycatcher, Common Merganser. All these guys are 5 points or higher, but not especially strong in terms of like the build your engine part of the game. Flycatcher just shares with everybody. Bald Eagle only gets a couple, fish one time. These guys are about converting resources into victory points, because the Merganser with the supposedly best power of like hunting here is like not even that good at hunting. All the die rolling hunters are not terribly strong. So Rob's probably a little disappointed to see not something exciting in the 3 flip here. And if he does indeed go wetland to draw cards, he is probably just going to rip off the top of the deck. I think that is what he's doing, unless he's got a specific plan, specific card that he's trying to play. He might be debating whether he's playing the Bell's Vireo down into the wetlands here, so that he doesn't have to pay an egg for that card draw, and that way he can just draw 2 cards straight up. By doing that, he is in the long run saying, look, I'm not going to draw a ton of cards this game because I don't want to be going into the wetlands a bunch. Like the Night Heron's power is just okay. Bell's Vireo doesn't have any powers at all. But admittedly, you just need a certain capacity of cards to play the game, and then you don't want to take the card drawing action anymore at all. Looks like he's debating a food action though. There's got to be some like inherent psychology thing, because with Rob and Maria just having pictures, I like assume that Mitchell and Mike are the chatty ones, but like it could entirely be that everybody at this table is just being super chatty so I can't see the video. It's like completely biasing my perceptions. Okay, so we do see a play into the wetlands here, which is great. He doesn't need to pay an egg for that. And it's like a American Coot or something like that. Is that right? Let's see. Oh, I got it right. An American Coot. This is a card tucker, which is just a great way to cycle into more draws. So that's I'm almost surprised that we didn't see this earlier from Rob, but I think he was just kind of planning out his sequence. Did he have an extra egg, or did he accidentally not pay an egg there? Here's a single card draw from Mitchell. See if we can see his face. Well, he doesn't look happy about it, so either he's a good actor or he's not happy about it. Mike here straight up goes for the scissor tail Flycatcher. Fascinating choice. It's not a great bird because everybody gets the same thing you do. Now, that's still good in the sense of you get to choose when to activate it and not, and you might need it more than other people do. But Mike's got one of the better food production engines in the game, so I think he's just grabbing that, saying, look, I'm going to be playing big birds for big points. That's going to be his game plan. Or maybe he's just compelled because it's the bird at the top of the box and thinks that the game is telling him something. The pileated woodpecker is the woodpecker that I thought Maria had in the first round. I really like that woodpecker. In case it's not clear, I like when one of your rows does something that your other row is supposed to do. So the woodpecker, yes, it gives everybody eggs, but it gives you a little bit more, and you can get eggs while you're running your food engine, which I really like. Looks like she is grabbing a resource here. 2 resources, so maybe discarded a card. That's painful because didn't have a ton of cards. So to me, that suggests she maybe had drawn a card earlier that she just really was not pleased with. Or she's got a really specific card that she wants to play. Like maybe she's sitting on a Raven or something that she like needs to get out. We didn't have any start of turn 2 Raven or Franklin's Gull or Killdeer plays. So I don't think anybody was specifically angling for that start here. That is, throughout this tournament, a lot of what I saw folks do. And we see Rob here playing out the Bell's Vireo that we talked about, but he's playing it up in the food section up there. So he's really trying to communicate like, yeah, I can take 2 food when I want to, but I really don't want to take this top row action because I've got 2 blanks here. The birds do no special things. And that makes sense. His Night Heron is going to be making a food over the course of the game. The only thing that's really awkward about Rob's plan right now is that he wants to be making eggs so that the Night Heron can be consuming those eggs. But yeah, he has no like bonuses for playing into that row right now. So I like the general game plan, but it is a little clunky and coming out. And I think in part of this, it's because like things like the Night Heron are very expensive. So he had to collect a lot of resources to make that happen. Mitchell here looks like he's just making gobs and gobs of eggs, more eggs than I've ever seen. I'm obviously over exaggerating here. I think he's maybe just trying to set himself up to have options, but he also like wants this end of round bonus here because I think that bird might have a bowl situation going on. Looks like Mike grabbed some food here. And Maria's going to play out. I'm going to guess something in the wetland. Go for the old 1-1-1. Yeah, so we get ourselves I think that's a peregrine falcon. So another hunter. Rob's happy to see that. Wonder if Maria's got like the rodent killer or the hunter end game scoring card and is caring a little bit more about hunters. I mean, again, she hasn't drawn that many cards, so it might just be, you play the cards that you get. All right. Rob's play here makes sense. I think he's probably out of cards, so he's drawing some off the top of the deck. He's going to be able to tuck here and draw another card, so throw his less favorite other cards underneath and then run the heron here. And he'll know that the fact that the heron's all the way to the left is nice because he'll know what card he wants to build next and set up in such a way to do that immediately after drawing his cards, right? He can eat that egg and make that decision. In fact, if it's a bird that costs 1 resource and goes into the grasslands, that's even better for him because he could throw it in the grasslands and then run the grasslands for more eggs, and then basically repeat this card drawing process. Yeah, right now I'm liking Rob's position the most. He's the only one that's got a card drawing engine, and unless from the birds that I've seen so far, I don't think anybody's hand is particularly amazing. So I think that they're all kind of just trying to take advantage, score some points here and there where they can. Be as efficient as they can with the things that they have, but drawing that second card makes a really big difference here. Oh, and he chose the bald eagle off the top, or off the display as his draw, so that means he really wanted it. I mean, the bald eagle does go nicely with the last row. It's 9 points, and if it has the opportunity to grab some fish, that's great. Now, Rob's food production engine is not the best. So, is he going to use heron to like build up to a bald eagle? That's a little tough. This is the yellow-headed blackbird, which lets you tuck cards for eggs. Really nice one to see in the bottom row there. I think that would be, could be a really significant grab for like anybody. But you're not going to have that many excess food. Okay. So Mitchell ripped a raven off the top. So when he looked serious, Note to self, Mitchell's serious that doesn't look good face is he drew a raven. Got it. So now Mitchell is playing the raven out to the middle row. It's a little bit funny because it means that the work that he's done in his top row is like largely irrelevant at this point. He's probably just going to spam that middle row for food and eggs. It's just more efficient than what the top does. But if we really look at it, like if he runs his top row, it's like 2 food, a die roll for a point, and an egg. If he runs the middle row, it's 2 eggs, 2 food, and then whatever that blue bird gives that I'm not sure of. So yeah, he pretty much isn't going to be running his top row anymore. So the raven, while very powerful, having drawn it a little bit later, is just a little bit awkward for him. Looks like Mike just scooped up a bunch of food here so that he could probably play out a scissor tail upcoming. He's got 1 egg left, so that'd be my guess. And the scissor tail is actually a really nice, not counter, but mitigation factor against ravens. If you find that you are playing against players with ravens, I think the things like the hummingbirds and the scissor tail, the other players can sort of like soft collude on just like, yes, we're going to share all sorts of things, food especially, because the player with the raven is going to have a lot of food. So if we make each other rich with food, then that player's advantage is not that beneficial. So that scissor tail, suddenly that power goes way up in valuation, I would say. And that puts Rob in the position where he's just probably never going to take the food action, right? Between the hunters and the night heron and getting some scissor tails, he's just not gonna have to bother. I think Maria did a card draw there, but I kind of missed it. And Rob here is going to kick off 4th round. We're basically halfway through the 2nd round here. With Mitchell holding a raven and I think the most eggs for the round objective. Although Maria's threatening it with the star owl. Rob draws some cards. Looks like they were mostly off the top until he drew this tucking yellow-headed bird. He's the one who's got the most cards, so that makes a ton of sense. Now if he throws that into his draw cards row, he doesn't need to go into the 2nd row anymore because he can tuck cards onto that bird to make eggs, and then the night heron can immediately gobble them up. In fact, he doesn't have the resources to play the yellow-headed blackbird. I was going to say that if he had the resources, not eating the bird of the egg off of the vulture would be a good play because he could then play the yellow-headed blackbird into that 3rd column immediately and just start running it. But since he needs the resource, I think he's debating whether he eats it now and then takes 2 eggs, or whether he doesn't eat it and takes 2 food. It's kind of a tough call, actually, but I think it makes sense to use your 2 food and an egg. No, actually, I guess he would really rather have the food at this stage in the game. So he's going to be taking a food action next. The only thing is that he would be left at the whim of the die rolling thing, and I think he needs a yellow, a grain, or a seed, or whatever you want to call it. And there isn't one in the roll display right now, so I think it might have been a mistake or a kind of a greedy play to not use the night heron there for the resource. I don't know what Mitchell's card situation is, but I'm surprised to see him running the middle row because I kind of in my head had assumed that he was down to nothing in his hand. And so it's hard to decide what food you want to take. I mean, you can just kind of take some random stuff, but like, what is he waiting for, you know? He really needs a card drawing engine of some sort. Now that he's got a really good food and really good egg drawing engine, that piece is going to be the one that stymies him. Looks like Mike's maybe playing something out here. Yeah, we're going to see that flycatcher. He's just going to start shoving worms down everybody's throat. All right, Maria's gonna look for a food action here. She drew a card, so she must have something specific she's looking to play. She really wants to get a second bird in play, and we saw from the camera that the bird she drew off the top there is not an exciting bird. It's great for points, so Mike or Mitchell might have been happy for it, but not for Maria's position. She really still needs to set up any kind of, efficient resource system here. I think her card draws have really not cooperated with her. He did manage to, oh no, she discarded the card that I was just talking about. That's what happened. She was grabbing food, of course. Duh, that makes so much more sense. Follow the thread, Nick. And she just cleared the food thing. This was a real blessing for Rob, because if Maria hadn't have taken that food action, I think he was going to be really jammed up. As is now, I see a yellow there. I suspect he's going to be taking food, grabbing that yellow so that he can play the yellow-headed whatchamacallit. He's holding a real grip of cards in his hand here too. Oh, looks like he's got another tuck bird. It's the green. It's maybe a green guy with double greens. What is he called? I think he's called a green-headed violet green swallow. I want to say purple too. So okay, great. Man, I practiced this game way too much last year. didn't work out. But that's Wingspan for you. I do feel like I'm significantly better at Wingspan than I was last time I did commentary on this game. Yeah, I guess Rob's weighing his options, but I feel like grabbing food, getting the grub and the grain, following that up next turn with playing out one of his yellow-headed bird thing, doing the draw card row twice to get 2 eggs. Oh no, he cannot. Awkward. Okay, so grabbing the grub and the grain, doing the card draw row after playing out the yellow-headed guy. Oh man, yeah. I'm struggling to sequence this correctly. So he's got, I think, 2 people that he wants to play into the draw card row, because they draw cards and tuck cards, and that makes that card row his engine, right? He's going to have so many cards. He needs to find more ways to get rid of them. So he really wants to put that yellow-headed black bird thing into play. So I think I would have grabbed food, put that bird into play, because he doesn't need the additional cards right now, I don't think. Bush Tit is a really good card in this game. It's maybe too late in round 2 because it's a star card and the second and third rounds cared about that. It's probably too late into this round for it to be really exciting, but Mitchell's perfectly happy with it because he can throw it into the bottom row there. Is he going to get it out in time that it's going to matter? I mean, he might even be the king of bowls anyway. So it's I think more exciting. It's more exciting for a different game position, but the Bush Tit is a very good card in general. Mike jams out the common loon here. So there's just a way to draw cards, and maybe he'll be friendly and just give everybody cards. If Mitchell plays one into the bottom row, Mike just gives everybody except for Rob a card, which seems fine. Especially if he needs them, right? Because yeah, that's, I think, Mike's primary game plan is I'm playing birds with points, and I'm just going to try to win with a fundamental board. Not much of an engine thing in the way that other people have. So by making everybody rich, they're better off. Okay, so Maria finally gets down a 4th bird. This bird is in the wetlands there, and I believe that's a bird that takes something also from the some food from the bird offering, or the food offering here. Food display, food tower. I forget what it's called. Which is good. But again, it's a 3-cost bird with only a so-so points value because of its flexibility. But it's nice to have in that cards row there because she's not very good at getting food right now. So it being there means that she's going to draw cards, get some more food, and be able to like figure out her game plan. So I do really like that for her. Rob went ahead and grabbed the food that we talked about last turn. Mitchell plays out the bush tit that he grabbed last turn. The awkward thing about the bush tit for Mitchell, and I started talking about this last turn, or the last round, and I kind of lost the thread on it, is that he can't really tuck cards to it because, for eggs, which is what it does, because he doesn't have the excess cards to tuck to it. Like maybe in the long run it'll work out that way, but I think he's not going to be able to use the bush tit for bush tit powers very often. And he's going to have probably some spacing issues. That's often what happens with the Ravens, is that you kind of fill your board up with eggs. Although admittedly he has a lot of space for eggs still left, and the bush tit does have 5 spaces on it, which is pretty good. Oh wow, Mike uses the Blue Jay and chose to gain a point earlier rather than the actual food resource. Very focused on those points. Did he make everyone richer? Yeah, he sure did. I mean, I think that makes sense. Like I talked about, like it's a way to counter the Ravens. Rob already has 2 grubs, so I think overloading him. Mike's the one who probably needs those grubs the most, except for maybe Maria, and I don't think I've made much of a secret of the fact that I'm concerned about her position in this game. And then he grabbed a fish. Wonder if he's got a second card in hand that will play after the loon. His real dream situation, I guess, in some ways, is that Mitchell plays a second wetlands card so that he can actually use the loon to just straight up draw a card and no one else can. Hilarious dream situation. All right, Maria gets to draw 2 cards. And then this woodpecker thing. Is it a woodpecker? I think you're a woodpecker, right? Yeah, I think it's a red-headed woodpecker, is looking for a grain, so they're going to re-roll the dice because she's left with only rats there. So good luck, and she makes it. Probably scoop that grain as a resource. And then again, we're going to see, is she going to go hunting? Because it's good for Rob if it hits, or is she going to neglect or elect to not hunt? I think she's far enough behind that she has to gamble. But that's great for Rob, obviously, who gets a free food here. Food's a thing that he really needs. But now he's got enough grubs and grain to play out the yellow-headed thing and the violet green swallow. The problem that he's facing right now is he just is actually really bad at eggs. I said he's really bad at food and he's really bad at eggs. He's just very good at cards. That's another way of saying that, I guess. Okay, I hear a child crying in the street, so let's just make sure it's normal. Hold on. All right, we're good. Normal. I don't want to go home crying. I did find out what the bluebird is. It's an indigo bunting, which does indeed get food. So Mitchell gets so much food from the middle, which is what I had suspected, but I was wrong about the bird name. We are closing in on the very end of this round. Rob kicked us off, so he's got one more action, and then so does everybody else. And then in terms of bowls, is the indigo bunting? Yeah, the indigo bunting is a bull bird. So, this is interesting because I think Mike has a chance of contesting here. Yeah, because Mike's got 2 bull birds, the blue jay and the scissor tail, and he can lay 3 eggs. So can Mitchell. And so I wonder, I mean, I think Mitchell's best play, I know it's Rob's turn, but Mitchell's best play, I think, is to lay 3 eggs on the bush tit and then consume, eggs off the owl or something like that with the raven. And then Mike's got to decide whether he wants to tie him yet again for the round goal, which I think he does. I don't think there's any reason that he shouldn't. The problem is that in Mike's position, he has to actually decide if he wants to use the fish crow, eat one of those eggs to get a point. And I think the answer is probably no at this stage. Tying Mitchell, who I think looks like one of his main competitors, is going to be worth it for Mike. Rob plays out here, the yellow-headed fella that we've been talking about for a while, consuming his last egg. So going in the next round, he might be in a make eggs play third bird situation or fourth bird in that bottom row situation. He really has an egg problem or like an egg laying problem. I wonder if I think that's why he probably chose to draw cards the previous turn, when I think he could have advanced the drawing system. And we see Mitchell doing exactly what we talked about a second ago here, throwing eggs on that bush head, which is one of its main advantages here. Yep, eating off of the owl. That's the nice safe one. And looking like he doesn't really know what resources he wants. I think in large part that's because he doesn't have the cards to tell him what he wants. So he's going to probably take a little bit of a rainbow. And then I think the bunting is going to whiff, if I'm just reading the bird feeder correctly. It's called the bird feeder. That's what it's called. Oh, no. That is that's a something that he can eat. Oh, it's the split one. The green and the yellow. So that works out nicely for him. So Mike just straight up says, you know what? If I can't eat the egg that the fish crow is, it's not even worth it for me. I do need to draw cards, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get them. I think he grabbed another duck-like card, a medium scoring card with medium abilities, but that helps him contest for that end of game water spot at a decent resources to points ratio. So I think his like everybody gets resources, let's make it Christmas and I'll take the cards with the most points and hope that makes it work plan is continuing. He might also have like an objective that says like have big birds or something, because I think the ducks are pretty big wingspan wise. Because we do know that he grabbed a second objective. There he goes again. Grabs a bird with 9 points, no powers. The American woodcock. And Mitchell gets to draw a card. He decides to draw the other card from the face-up row there. I think I would have drawn a random. I don't know. Although... yeah, I mean, I guess he's got plenty of resources, so he doesn't really care that the birds are awkward. He cares that the birds are worth something. So, yeah, Mitchell makes so many food resources that I need to throw my valuation out the window there. And, admittedly, he would have drawn that flycatcher off the top, which goes in the forest, which he no longer cares about. So, good call on Mitchell's part to take the conservative, not exciting card. That worked out nicely for him. I think Maria here could swoop in and tie for second. Looks like she's going to do that. And I mean, she's incentivized to do so anyway, because she needs to take eggs at some point pretty soon. The question, I think, is whether she would spend... Uh-oh. Am I wrong about the owl? I think it's a star, right? Owl... Burrowing owl. Yeah, it's a star. And then she put it on the peregrine falcon. I think that is I've been playing Wingspan for 10 hours mistake. I think playing it on the Burning Owl was the correct call there. Because she would have tied for third with Mike. I think the fact that there's a Mitchell and a Mike here means that I just always want to call everybody Michael. 7 actions, right? At the end of the round? Yeah. So, end of the second round here. I think that, starting from the top left, I've made no secret about the fact that I think Maria is in trouble. She just has not had, and really none of her bird cards are carrying their weight. They've all been pretty expensive. Because it's been expensive, it's taken her a long time to get set up. Obviously, she's just down 1 bird compared to other people, but she doesn't have any particularly powerful ecosystems and nothing that's especially good on her player board compared to what the other players are doing. Rob has the card draw engine. He's leaning fully into the end game, have a full row of water birds. And I do really like his game. His game seems the most fun in a lot of ways, but he's got a lot of cards and he hasn't played out any cards into the grasslands, and he needs to be laying eggs. And so that's going to be really, really awkward. If he has some system for placing eggs, and the yellow-headed blackbird is not quite enough because that heron's going to be gobbling up those eggs as he plays them, that's going to make the difference about whether his game plan can come together or not. I think it might have been too long. Like it may have taken too long for his system to come together. If he had this together maybe a few turns ago, I think things would look a little bit different. Mitchell here, who's grabbing the Clark's Grebe, which is a really great 5.1 resource card that goes into the wetlands that we're talking about, is, I think, in the driver's seat with that really powerful center row of getting food and eggs, or like food and egg. So he doesn't have a good point scoring system though, and the birds that he has in play are like only so in points, so he's gonna have to play some catch up there. I didn't like the second bird that he grabbed there, the one that travels between zones, because I don't think he needs to be doing much zone traveling, and I would have rather drawn randomly, and that Brewer's Blackbird I think could have been potentially more exciting for him. Or actually even the Eastern Bluebird. That's a great card for someone that's got a lot of resources, just points and fills out your egg row really quickly. And then Mike's position is the most interesting. He has easily the most points on the board right now, having tied for first in the 2 objective rows and having the most expensive birds in play. But none of his infrastructure is terribly exciting. He's got, in fact, I think some of the weaker birds in terms of powers across all 4 players. But I think he also is just kind of acknowledging that system of if everybody gets rich, then the fact that their systems are better, technically that benefits me ratio-wise, right? Like if everybody gets plus $2 and I have $5 and everyone else is $10, then I'm 40% richer, whereas they're only 20% richer. And he's noticing that reaction. And I think that is really wise of him. Trying to figure out what to do right now. I mean, I think for what he's demonstrated so far, Eastern Bluebird is a good option for him, in the sense of if he can get another grasslands bird and just spamming out those guys, the Bluebird's a decent point ratio, and maybe just the answer is the Brewer's Blackbird. Brewer's Blackbird, though, is really awkward because I don't think he has very many cards in his hand. So he might not be able to use that Brewer's Blackbird to pitch too many cards for the eggs. So I think that's what he was debating, but if he can't play a second grasslands bird, he's in trouble. I think I still would have drawn off the top, but I'm a little bit of a greedy player when it comes to Wingspan, I think. Especially when I see someone else with the crow. I can't tell if he activated the loon and now they're waiting for Mitchell. That's certainly a possibility. Looks like we did a scene cut there, so that probably is what's happening. Yeah, and we're pointing to the loon right now. So does that mean that he then drew 3 cards? Oh no, he saved the egg. He didn't use the egg. Carolina Wren is normally a card I'd only really consider playing in the beginning, but it's actually kind of an interesting choice for Mitchel here because he's very good at making food, and he's not so good at drawing cards. So I think he's not so bad at drawing cards that you take a 1-point bird at this point in time, but I think it could have been a very real consideration, right? Because for him to draw 2 cards right now, he needs to pitch an egg. Although I think he's going to be playing out another bird very soon, so he's got the resources for it. I did forget about that. So yeah, definitely not the Wren then. So he drew something random. Baird Sparrow. So I was wrong about the pebbles. We're on sticks for the goal for this round. So all our ravens and hunters. Maria's drawing some cards here. Okay, so she chooses the Carolina Wren. Maybe to get a second in that food producing row there, as well as draw some cards, which she's okay at drawing cards right now. It's not the most exciting for her, but she does need to find a way to make up actions. So I can see the logic of throwing a second bird up top so that you can get the 2 food and drawing 2 cards with it, because hopefully she's only taking like maybe 1 more food action this game. And then I think Maria's path to victory is sort of, I was going to say like egg spam, but she's just, like maybe actually like she should be going for the bottom row. I'm not sure. Okay, so Rob here jams out the violet green, not into the tucking row, but instead into the grassland so that he can take an extra action while he's making eggs. Also, he can convert extra scissor tail grubs into eggs right now if he wants to. All right, looks like Mitchel is playing out a burb. Cleaning up the bush tit, because now that it's not quantity of eggs on the bush tit, he just needs to keep 1 for it to count for this round's sticky goal. And making space on the bush tit allows him to tuck more cards underneath there, making eggs. So that's a very wise sequencing option on his part. And he plays out that Clark's Grebe. A totally fine option for giving him extra card draw choices, but mostly it's the 5 points for the 1 resource. And looks like Mike here is going to scoop a proper 3 food. So he can do bluebird things next turn. Then jam his egg row. Points, points, points. Oh, interesting. Maria's drawing cards, but I know that she picked up the Carolina Wren, so like my instinct would be that you'd play the Carolina Wren, but I can't see her food, so she might not have the food to play it. And then now she has the opportunity to re-roll and hopefully roll into a yellow. Ooh. Ugh. Beats just keep being bad. Is that a successful hunt? Nope. More bad beats. Bad beat for Rob too. Probably laying eggs here. I just don't see him having many other options. The question is whether he lays 3 eggs and eats one of those yellows. Because of the night heron, that's only really effective if he doesn't need the yellows. So it sort of depends on the cards that he has in his hand. But looks like he does need the yellows. So instead he'll just do 2 and then tuck for a point and draw something. Chris George, I know you're probably not watching this after you did this video, but I don't know how you did the extra zoom ins on each of the birds, but very well done, sir. All right, so here we see egret. Not terribly exciting, but it only costs 1 resource for 4 points, and it fills up that water row as Mitchell is looking towards the end game here. Does the egret also have sticky things? Let's see. Egret. Yep, snowy egret, sticky things. So meets the round's goals as well. Oh, the other thing about Clark's Grebe is I think it's a star. So Mitchell's in really good shape to win the round objective here. Things are looking really good for Mitchell. Mike is really debating this, but I thought for sure he was going for a double build here. Is he out of eggs? No, he had 3, right? Is that what he was just eating? Oh, maybe he didn't have enough eggs, so he's making eggs this turn. Yeah, spreading the wealth. I don't quite know what the pause is. Yeah, he might just not have had all the eggs and resources to do the double build. I thought he had. And, in my envisioning, he would build those and then run the egg row. But looks like we're having a pause of some sort here. This is what I get for not having watched the original file. I like not being spoiled, though. Gotta say, for the most part, I'm not mad at the 50% speed. Every once in a while, I'm struggling to keep up or I miss a move here and there, but for the most part, we're on it. So this is round 3. Mitchell kicked us off in this round, or action 3 of round 3. Okay, looks like Mike finished there, so whatever was resolved. It could just be that Maria was in the restroom, and I don't know because she's just a picture that's sitting there. I know that something happened with the data. Is it the pileated woodpecker? I like him early. He's not as exciting late. I continue to think that Maria's in trouble. She doesn't. Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems with Wingspan is that you can fall behind and it's really, really hard to catch up still. I mean, you fight for what you can do. So like she needs a second card up there in the forest. But again, back to taking the wren, it's interesting if she was thinking that she was going to play the pileated woodpecker up there. I don't know how to say pileated. Let's find out. Here, we'll do this. So you can find out with me. Pileated. 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 There are two. That's perfect. Pileated. All right. So that's as pileated. Amazing. But apparently both are legit. Looks like we got Rob tanking. Rob's our time loser for this game, unfortunately. He does have the most cards in hand, so it makes sense that he has to kind of juggle what his different options are there. Yeah, I have no idea what his he's got like 7 cards or something ridiculous at this point. He's got the 2 eggs. I mean, I suspect he's playing into the water row. Normally at this point, I would like question whether you should be playing into the water row, but because it's the last round objective, it makes a lot of sense. Is that a grackle? Oh man. So when he runs his bottom row, he draws cards and just tucks everything, making lots of eggs. It does make the violet green swallow in the grasslands a little bit more awkward. Like if you know you're going to play a grackle out, why play the violet green guy in the middle? You know you're going to make enough. If you're making 2 eggs a lap on the bottom, you're not going to be taking the grasslands action. You're going to be jamming that bottom row action. I don't think he took a draw action after the violet green. I think that may have been a little bit of a awkward sequencing thing. Mitchell here is going to overpay 2 eggs for a migrator. You know, I don't know if this bird's ever going to move somewhere else, but that's an expensive migrator. It does at least come with a star, so he's going to absolutely dominate the round goal when he makes eggs. I think he was supposed to play that in the middle, though. Make eggs, and then he can fly it to the bottom. Saves you a point. And we get Mike's double play. I'm trying to think if there's any like path that you have as Maria here. And it's not like she's really contesting those end game goals. Unlikely that she can play 3 birds into the wetlands, which Mitchell and Rob almost certainly are going to. Yeah, I think if I'm Maria, the only thing I would do is kind of like what Michael's doing, is I would play into the grasslands, do the kind of classic like egg bomb at the end of the game, and hope that gets you there. A warbler in the forest is not that. It's a nice way to get an extra point in the forest, but at this stage, you're hoping to pivot out of the forest unless you have a lot of big, heavy birds to play. Rob drawing a pile of cards here. He's going to grackle, blackbird, tuck egg, tuck draw. System's coming online. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points and 3 cards. Well, not really 3 cards. One card. 5 points and 1 card, which is fine because it's a filtered card. So he's, gets the best of like 4 cards that he draws, or 4 points, a food, and a card, which is a pretty incredible engine. We'll have to see if it's enough for Rob to catch up, being completely behind on objectives, and I think behind on bird points as well, though his bird points aren't awful. You know, Night Heron's 9, and the rest of his guys are mostly worth like 3s and 4s. Yeah, I mean, yeah, his bird points are actually pretty respectable. Okay, so Mitchell did say, "Hey, I want to draw some cards," and then we'll see if, I mean, I think he's got to fly the bird into the middle, right? Like this is his 5th action. His 6th action has to be lay eggs. I'm pretty sure he can't give away. He's only got 2 sticky birds with eggs right now, which I think is contested by Maria pretty easily, and maybe other players too. So he's going to take eggs next turn, so might as well move the migrator there. I think to that point, I stand by my kind of comment earlier. I think that he could have played the migrator into the grasslands row and then moved it from the grasslands back into the wetlands and then drawn the 3 cards. The only advantage of drawing the 3 cards first is knowing what resources to take with the crow or the raven, which is valuable. And then I guess the question is if it's 1 point valuable, and that's a tough call. I actually really don't know now that I'm saying it out loud, whether that's correct that way or another. But assuming that he ends up taking eggs at least 2 more times, probably whatever resources you take with the raven you can use. Like I would take like a fish because you're hoping to play into the wetlands, and a rat because like rats are worth a lot of points on the right birds. Speaking of fish and rats, Rob ostensibly has a bald eagle in hand that he should be playing in the 5th slot down there. Is that why he played the violet green swallow? Because he knows what he's playing into he wanted to play the grackle in the 4th slot. Yeah, maybe. And I guess Rob has to play. He has to play eggs actions sometimes because he's going to run out of actions to take in the bottom row there. Mike jams a grasslands action here, spreads out. Looks like he's got only a couple sticky nests. I think that's not going to be too helpful for him. Should I call them twiggy nests instead, so it doesn't sound like the birds are attached to them? What are we thinking about here? What resource you want? He's debating what random resource he'll need when he draws cards. Could be. So I think he's eating off of his brewer's blackbird right there, which makes sense. That's the bird that's going to maybe get too many eggs accrued on it if you're discarding cards. I think he has 0 cards now, though. But, you know, his common loon is a max value now. No one else has only 1 bird in the wetland. Maria's going to rip 1, 2. Oh, awkward. She can't use the acorn, so she's discarding a card to eat 3 things so that her acorn woodpecker has the opportunity to peck some acorns. That's cool. It's a clever way of doing that, I think. Checking out all the birds here, making sure there's nothing exciting. Don't think she's got enough appropriate birds for the lark that she was looking at. She liked that middle one, though. I think I would have just drawn on the top here because I wasn't too excited by that. Everyone's going to make some eggs here. Are they going to wait for Mike to get back, or are they going to move? Oh, did the board shift? We've lost Mike's name. Now we just have his last name, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I'm very bad at the Eastern European names. All right. Eggs laid. Oh, not quite yet. I think at this stage it doesn't matter too much where the eggs go, just as long as you have shape. Hey, she hits this time. And she wants the resource, which makes sense. As opposed to cashing it on the bird. I think she probably has plans. All right, it's Rob's turn. Is he going to get food? It's very awkward to get food because the bottom row, the Night Heron gives you a food. You get a bunch of points. Okay, great. That's not the case. He's going to play House Finch instead. Dude is a tuck engine for days. It's only 3 points, though. It's got a lot of space for eggs, but yeah, it's not the most exciting play, really. It's just like a 2-point play. And then every time he runs that row, it's going to be worth +1 point. So we'll have to see how many times Rob takes the bird action or by the end of the game. I mean, if he has that end game objective that's like a point per tuck card or whatever, then maybe he'll just disgustingly run away with it, but tough to say. I thought we were on round 6 already. No, that was round 5. Okay. Oh, duh, I'm just getting ahead of myself because I said that Mitchell was going to lay eggs. There he is. Bird's going to fly back to the middle. Checking everybody to make sure that they can't contest him. Yes, of course. But even still, he's got an egg on each of the birds, so it doesn't really matter. So then the question is whether he flies this bird back into the bottom row. He does. Because if he plays a fifth card into that row, then the migrator is locked up. And it depends on what he drew, but he might not be taking any more cards actions. I mean, I think ideally for him, he's like play bird, play bird, play bird if he can. Run eggs, eggs, eggs. He really doesn't want to be running that bottom row if he can afford not to. Well, actually, bottom row is... No. It's only... The bush tit at least makes the bottom row positive points, but if he can play more birds into the middle, that'd be nice for him. All right, is this a 5th? Yeah, Mike here just straight up saying, you know what? I'm not going for that last round goal. I am jamming every bird into my middle row as possible. Now, normally an American Woodcock 5th slot is not exciting here because you don't end up having extra food to make 5 eggs per round. You just kind of make the 4 eggs per round, which you would have even not filling the spot. But because he's got the scissor tail and he could just jam extra food, it actually is, he can always guarantee that he'll be able to make that 5th egg work for him. So that's a kind of a cool side effect of the scissor tail. All right, looks like Maria here is also throwing down some eggs. She might be second place here. I haven't looked at every single bird's nest situation, but yeah, she might get a couple points for this contest. Ah, success. Rob's vulture vultures. This is really good for Rob. He's happy to get the resource at this point. He takes a fish because he's working towards that bald eagle. Is he gonna run the middle row? I mean, it's a 5-point action right now. So that's +1 for the Finch. So Finch is now worth 3 points. And the violet green guy is 3, 4. He's in at 5, so he's worth 5 points. Forster's turn would have been pretty exciting earlier in the game, but at this stage, not worth it. He's just going for random big value cards off the top of the deck. That's going to bring us to the end of round 3. All right, quick pause for me. Alrighty, last lap. We've got 40 minutes left, but we're at 50% speed, so just a little over 25. Late Franklin's Gull here. Not going to get anybody's attention. That ash-throated flycatcher, though, is a little bit exciting if you have the right matching birds for it. I don't think anybody greatly benefits from it. Yeah, maybe not the most exciting. And now Mike is going first, so he's doing the if I take eggs 5 times, can I fit them all on my board? And I think the answer is no. At like 4 or 5 a clip, yeah, I don't think he has enough room. He's got 2, 5, 10, 11, 13, 16, like 17-ish or something like that. So maybe he draws cards instead. The cards can always go to the Brewer's Blackbird if they're not exciting. I think Franklin's Gull is a mistake to pick up at this point in time. Doesn't do a lot. He can afford it straight out, but I think the Great Blue Heron would be my choice. Well, no. What I would do is if he has no cards in hand, which I assume is I would draw a card off the top of the deck first, and then I would see if it was a water bird, and then I would take the Great Blue Heron. Try to play both of those birds in one fell swoop. Maybe he has a card in his hand. Oh, or I guess actually the Franklin's Gull is a water bird. So he's doing a conservative version of what I just described, which is actually probably smarter now that I see it. So well done, Mike. Yeah, well done, because that's 8 points minus 2 for the egg, 6 points. And he can make the resources off of the fish crow. So he's gonna, lay eggs, double play birds, lay eggs, something like that, and that's the rest of his game. Buried Sparrow for Maria here lets her play some decent 4-egg actions. I don't know what her food situation is. She might be playing out another bird, but she might just be jamming 4 eggs for the rest of the game. Rob here needs the resources to play his bald eagle, but his crown heron can get him there. So right now running his middle row is 5 points. Running his bottom row is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, or 4 points and a food. It's a little awkward where like both of his rows are good, but they are equally good. If this had been, if he'd known that this was his plan, he'd have been better off with the Grackle probably in the middle, because I think he still has excess cards in his hand. And the House Finch in the bottom. Because at this stage, like, you want to be getting more points than card options, probably. It depends on how many cards he has in his hand, but it is entirely possible that the Grackle should have been where, yeah, there should be a switch there. And Rob's going to grab the flycatcher. Okay, so yeah, I can't quite see. I don't think a ton of his birds care about the flycatcher, but at least a few of them. I think 1, 2, maybe 3 of them. If it's 3 of them, it would be like it's like a 5-point play or something like that. Maybe 6 points, which is slightly better than running one of his rows. That's fine. All right. Ooh, Mitchell drawing a bird that lets him play another bird. Pretty weenie second bird, though. Cost him 2 points. I think only is worth 1 point. So it's only gonna, I'm sure he's gonna run eggs 2 times or something like that. So it's only gonna end up netting him about a point. So it's pretty unexciting, frankly. I hope he has a bird to play into the wetlands. And that he plans to play. I mean, he should, because he's got excess food. And food at the end doesn't really do anything. And here we have Michael gobbling up 5. Yep. Not the blackbird. There you go. We're tucking something. Didn't see what it was, but I think it was not the gull and not the heron. Everybody gets some food. And then he will probably gobble up something else. Yep, off the blackbird is the way to do it. Getting himself another fish so that he can double play his cards. The Franklin's gull and the gray heron. Very nice. All right, so it looks like Maria's going to be jamming some eggs here. That might just be the rest of her game, if she's doing it at this stage. That's a lot of worms. Oh, that's a hit. Now let's Rob grab a fish, and now he can straight up play the bald eagle. I think it makes sense to play it now because he can re-roll the middle, see if he hits any fish. I mean, I guess he could wait and see, but people aren't going to be getting that many more resources, so I think his odds are probably best at the top of the order. I don't know that we're going to reshuffle or re-roll the bird feeder after this next time. Oh, he grabs a grub. I thought that would have been a re-roll for like a fish or something. Interesting. Is he going to play 2 cards then? Is he just taking the lay eggs action? No, he's eating eggs. Oh, it's not going to be. I see. We've got an ibis rather than a... Maybe he's tucked the bald eagle a while ago. Doesn't still have it. I think the ibis is 8 rather than 9 points. But it hunts. So, in theory, it could be worth more if he runs that row. So, in theory, his bottom row is the best to run right now, points-wise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, plus whatever. All right, so Mitchell is playing a hummingbird into the center row. Interesting. That's only 2 points. I feel like that's not... Maybe... I'm struggling to understand that. Maybe he has a card that like is an endgame scoring for that. But I think he can make more points by making other plays at this stage. I mean, he does have a problem with like egg capacity, I think. And so maybe it's a play about egg capacity. But like, why doesn't that hummingbird go into wetlands? Something else has to be going into the wetlands. So Mike played and just played the gull. No heron. That's very surprising. Maybe he was resource strapped somehow? But if he was resource strapped, he should run the center row again and fish crow his way out of it. See, Maria had Mike taking a break from the table. I think Maria just ran eggs again. And here we go, Rob with the bottom row. Ooh, and he hits. I mean, he has 4 dice, best chance he could possibly get. So now the ibis is at least as good as a bald eagle. Egg, egg. Tuck, tuck, tuck. So now the moment of truth. Does he pay a point for a resource? I think the answer is no, unless he has a very specific couple of cards in his hand. The reason no is because, you know, if he pays a point for a resource, plus he has to play the point for when he plays the card, versus like running either his middle or bottom row, which are worth like 5 points each. Man, with him taking a thing, I have to cranberry. I have to assume that he's got a Baltimore Oriole. But that's 1, 2. I think it's like a wash of points. I think. So Mitchell is observing everyone else's birds for one reason or another. Oh, he's trying to see whether he should share resources. I mean, if he doesn't need a particular resource, then he should just skip running this because he's fine at making resources. I think he played out 3 cards, so he didn't have any left in his hand. Oh, there he goes. He says, let's do it. Maybe he does have a card in hand. Interesting. So Mitchell took a rat, I think. Grain, cranberry for the Oriole. Oriole. Okay, great. So he didn't have to eat the other food for the Oriole. So he may have gained himself a point there. He being Rob. I'll just see what happens with Mitchell's food. Let's make some eggs and the chipping sparrow. And looks like he passed the raven. Indigo bunting for something. I think probably just take the green out of there if he doesn't care. Or the green yellow, the hybrid. Just limits other people's options more. Not that I think anybody's really taking food at this point. Food. Or, I mean, not food, but eggs. Ah, okay, here comes the heron. With another friend? Oh no. Just a plain old duck. Why wasn't that a heron and the duck? I'm so confused. I think that's just a 2-point mistake. Oh, maybe he has enough cards that he's also playing out the heron and something else. He's going to get to 5. I still think I would have played the Heron first in case you like decide to change your plan for whatever reason. You know, like if you're banking on getting certain food from other people and they didn't give you food. Yeah, curious. That's gotta be something along the lines of his plan. And that was, I think, Maria laying more eggs. Yeah, she had a rough game. Just couldn't get anything exciting. And birds are not created equal. So if Rob has the Oriole, at this point, it makes sense to play it at 7 points, right? Pay 1, eat the resources. But instead, looks like he's going to go fishing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And he missed the hit, so 5 points here. Yeah, it's super... I said it before, but I'm just going to reiterate. It's super awkward that both of his second and third rows are kind of equivalent. It's awkward in the sense that like he's put the effort into building the second row, right? Like that Finch, I think he's used it twice. So it's a 4-point Finch. And it does make me wonder if like, could he have played something more powerful? He had a lot of cards in his hand. Make a bunch of resources, or I mean eggs. I'm going to take a quick pause. All right. I had to look up what their endgame scoring cards, bonus cards were, so I could report back. In fact, actually, we're going to see a lot of iterative actions here. So what we're going to do is a little skipsies because we're going to see a lot of egg laying in the last round. Laying eggs by Mike, laying eggs by Maria. Rob's debating something. But I think, okay, so he plays a flycatcher. And makes a handful of extra eggs. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's an 8-point play minus the 1 is 7. Okay, so it wasn't a Baltimore Oriole. It was a flycatcher that we saw him play earlier, pick up earlier. Makes sense. It's still very marginal. He used the Night Heron once, which was like a point, so it was like 6 points, something like that. And then Mitchell's going to do his final action here of scoring eggs. And then they're going to go into the scoring round, which since we're not doing the audio here, it's a little silly for us to go through. So let me just tell you briefly, I didn't catch every single bit of the score, but basically Maria's got 1 bonus card worth 3 points. Rob's has 2 bonus cards, but they kind of end up whiffing as he only gets 2 points for each of them. So 4 total. Mitchell has 1 for 3 points, and then Mike has 2 bonus cards that he ends up scoring 18 points on. One of them is the Omnivore card. That's 2 points for every bird with wild, which certainly explains pickups like the Franklin's Gull and the duck at the end. Now, that being said, I think the Franklin's Gull is 3 points, and it's a +2 for the Omnivore thing. I still think that the Great Heron was a better play because it saves you an action along the way there. But it doesn't end up mattering. Those 18 points are what puts Mike over the top with a kind of roughly 90-ish score. Rob has a score in the mid-80s, and Mitchell has below that. And then Maria comes in fourth, unsurprisingly. So a huge pickup from Mike with the objectives there. And I am certainly curious whether he started with Omnivore or if it was the card that he drew off of that very first bonus card thing that he played. Certainly one that benefits you to know it. You're going to pick up your, Brewers, Blackbirds and things like that. a little bit earlier, it also explains like his pickup, like Common Loon, Fish Crow, right? Like these guys that were already like decent, had some context, but actually all these cards read as +2 victory points along the way. So Mike was definitely paying attention to what that end game bonus card is, which I think is really nice. I am surprised by Mitchel's position. I think it was certainly, I think that Hummingbird was supposed to go in the bottom row. There were definitely some pretty awkward bird plays at the end there, right? Those like the sparrows and all those plays. It was like a bunch of birds that basically like didn't end up scoring him points. And so, you know, we talked about earlier that he was struggling with card draw, and he has a row of 4 at the bottom, but frankly, he didn't manage to really get cards that allowed him to take advantage of that Raven. Like he had a great food engine, and he has like a bunch of piddling mediocre birds. I think there's no bird on his map that's over 5 points, which isn't really where you want to be with the Raven. And yes, he's got a lot of eggs, but I don't think he has as many eggs as Rob had. Tucked cards, for instance. Rob had a nice engine going on, but was kind of bifurcated between 2 different rows. Like you can see that his board's not full of eggs. Like he has a lot of time left in this game. If this game goes for a 5th round, he's probably the winner. But that's not how it goes. You need to kind of focus on getting those points now. And Mike just jammed that. He just jammed huge bird points. I think his bird point score was like 51 or something ridiculous like that. So let's try again. Congratulations to Mike for winning the 2023 Wingspan Ring Final. He will then go on to play in the grand semifinal after this. And thank you for watching this. Hope you enjoyed the video. And if you haven't already yet, please throw me a like and subscribe, and have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.